This week's episode is brought to you by Ian Cozart, Amber Young, Andrew Deering, and Matt Roska. Thank you, Ian Cozart, Amber Young, Andrew Deering, and Matt Roska. It's with the generous support of listeners just like you that keeps our tiny podcast broadcasting the esoteric cheat codes of reality at maximum output directly from the transdimensional armpit of the goddess herself to help you gain the supreme enlightenment and subterfuge the Black Iron Prison. If you want to sabotage the Black Iron Prison or just hear the full-length episode, please become a member at www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit, where your tiny donation of just $5 a month will not only get you the extended version of this show, but all our Demiurge trolling episodes available on your podcast player of choice. But that's not all. I'll send you a 5x5 high-quality vinyl sticker of our big bunny cover art at no additional cost, and the secret keys to our Discord server where we exchange occult secrets, pet photos, horticulture tips, and creative projects we're working on. For instance, do you like ghost stories? How about dogs? Ancient deities? Serial killers? Ritual murder? What about all of this taking place on a cozy backdrop of an Eastern European bed and breakfast? If any of this piques your interest, check out Good Night, Room 9 by Cody Ray George. You might know him as Mylea, the loyal member of the Whole Rabbit Discord community and the guy who made the intro and outro music to this show. Pick up Good Night, Room 9 on Amazon.com and then let us know what you think. We know if you enjoy the Whole Rabbit, but sometimes it makes your ears bleed, this is the perfect remedy. Check out Good Night, Room 9 by Cody George today. On this week's episode, we continue our journey of the tarot and arrive at the High Priestess. In the free show, we discuss the rich tapestry, literally, of symbolism in the High Priestess of the tarot, her role in the hero's journey, the twin pillars of creation, her ancient etymological roots, and why she's a virgin. Not to mention, we discuss the fabled Oracles of Delphi. In the extended show, we discuss the Vestal Virgins, the ancient Egyptian Neith, Isis, and her synchronized form as Athena. Near the end, we explore the symbolism featured in the Thoth deck and some of the geometric mysteries encoded into the art. Thank you, and enjoy the show.
Do you think the Nature Boy ever took a peek under the veil?
Ric Flair?
Yeah, Nature Boy Ric Flair.
Of course. That's why he's excited all the time.
Isn't the figure four leg lock his finisher move?
Because he's the emperor.
Oh, he also does the chop. Just like chop you across the chest multiple times, yelling, "Woo!" The crowd would join in on it every time he smacks you.
Chopping up some lines right off your chest.
Why don't you shut up before I peel some bacon off your back?
Hello everybody, and welcome to The Whole Rabbit, where we do more than just peek behind the veil of the Mysterium Tremendum. Nay, we lift the veil with heavy rope and ascend upon the path of the moon, riding our magic, rainbow-spitting camel of wisdom, because this week, we're discussing the glittering, effulgent beauty of the High Priestess from history, mythology, and the tarot. I'm your host, Luke Madrid, also known as the Hack Rabbit. I'm joined this week by the starry moon mom, Mari-sama.
Hello, children.
The imbiber of Icenian dew, Malachor 5.
Drip, drip, drip. Hello.
And the gleaming galactic girl, Heka Astra.
Hello.
As we continue our journey of the tarot, we arrive at the throne of the High Priestess, the third card of the major arcana. Like the Virgin Mary, the moon rests at her feet. The bow of Artemis Diana lies ready at her lap. In her hands, the sacred texts, whose words are the axis upon which the truth itself revolves, is waiting. Bedecked by pillars at either side, she is perched high upon her throne, as a hallucinatory gas emerges from the rock beneath it, draping her in slithering coils of intoxicating vapor. She alone knows the truth, and from her lips, they are born wrapped in a garment of prophetic poetry to which even the greatest kings must bow. Science dwelleth within her, as she is veiled ever by the light. But who is she really? And why does everyone keep pointing out she's a virgin? Who was the nice eunuch we met outside tending to the camel? And as we explore the symbols associated with the High Priestess of the Tarot, we will discover many themes and symbols running like an unmuddied stream through the various cultural mythologies and religious institutions from the ancient to the modern world. More than just a character from the Tarot, the High Priestess, in so many words, represents a direct pathway to God, a body of traditions obscured by the veil of time and the continued rejection of what she represents. So let's say we have a deck of tarot cards, and we get the High Priestess. What does that mean in terms of divination or in terms of the reading?
I mean, depending on the inquiry, I find this card immensely positive.
It's probably the most outright positive card of the major arcana. When I get it in a reading, it's what New Agers might call getting a download. You're seeing the unfiltered truth in total clarity, a revelation, an epiphany, or perhaps a message from a dream. From a practical perspective, it could also correspond to a creative vision, suddenly knowing how to do something or fix something, or a piece of inspired art.
Yeah, and this is also typically known as clairsentience. It's a receiving of knowledge through feelings. So more of an abstract, like you're not feeling the fire of a stove, or, you're not feeling cold, or it's more of the wisdom is beamed down, connects with your heart in some way in which you feel a feeling that something is off or wrong, or you know that something is right or good. People that experience this, they have visions. They have visions inside of their head, almost like a dream, but it happens suddenly and within the waking state.
It's that heart-mind connection.
Mm-hmm.
I'd also like to say that, in life there's ups and downs. And if your inquiry is pretty specific about these fields being out of balance, if you want to interpret upside down cards, usually I don't. I look at the cards as having like both positive and negative meanings. So
Me too.
the negative side of this card is actually pretty scary, because then it's like you're losing your artistic vision, you're losing your wisdom, and might fall into delusion. Definitely something you would want to look out for if that was like a warning sign on your personal journey.
I'd say the lower expression of this type of phenomena would be considered gut feeling. That's what most people say, is that their gut wrenches up, or, you have this reaction, this physical feeling reaction to something. So it's telling you that's right or wrong. But the vision part of it is more of a higher receiving of the knowledge where you actually get a picture with it. But the lower receiving of it is more of like a flinch, fight or flight reaction.
So on the higher end of it, it's like Archimedes sitting in the bath and realizing that mass over volume equals density. And now he can figure out if the crown is made of gold or not. He screams Eureka and runs through the streets naked. On the lower end, you just run through the streets naked. Like the lunar becomes loony and you just are a nutbag.
Perhaps, yes.
Makes total sense here.
As a Jungian archetype on the Fool's Journey through the Tarot, the High Priestess's role is as the Sacred Virgin. The connection of the High Priestess archetype to the Sacred Virgin or the Virgin Mother is still a common and widely used archetype today as the Virgin Mary.
Often we still see the Virgin Mary depicted with the moon at her feet, much like she is in the High Priestess of the Tarot.
She has a nature of humble receptivity and is committed to embodying divinity, and in turn, the eventual birth of the divine child of God. She does this by receiving the divine spark or wisdom, carrying it forth, and protecting it in its transformation. She will incubate and nourish it within her. The archetype of the Virginal Mother brings with it the action of the purity of spirit made flesh, as she is the feminine vessel that is filled with divine wisdom, the receiver of the divine word to bring it to fruition. She is symbolic of the divine feminine in its most pure and modest incarnation, like crystal clear receptive water.
In the Rider Waite deck, the bottom of her robes are even illustrated as if they're made of water.
Wisdom has historically been given a feminine nature, so for me this brings to mind the Gnostic Sophia and even the Wisdom of Solomon, which is also called the Book of Wisdom in the Old Testament. In this book, wisdom is given feminine determinatives, and since the nature of being wise requires receptivity in order to truly take it in, we may also relate the holding of memory to being like water in a cup, and likewise belonging to the receptive feminine side of divine energy. So knowledge by itself could be considered as relating to the mental realm, whereas wisdom connects the heart with the mind, and as such it can be related to divine memory. It is with this principle of divine wisdom associated with the High Priestess that the magician reveals the hidden items of the Fool's Bindle Bag, the universal creative tools that were carried within it. It's the divine wisdom of their use for creation that is held by the High Priestess herself. By immersing oneself in her, you can come to truly know yourself, and in knowing yourself, you come to know God.
And as we'll be discussing, the greatest oracle in all history, the Oracle of Delphi, know thyself is the most well-known phrase written over the entryway to the temple.
On the Fool's Journey, the tools that were inside of the Fool's Bindle Bag were unpacked by the magician. These are the creative universal tools, which, in their use, become the perpetual input for the High Priestess. As secrets of nature, this divine input is perpetually veiled. The High Priestess is the receiver of this input and delivers it unto manifestation, Tifrath.
Yes, in so much as she represents the unity of all the paths above the abyss on the Kabbalistic tree of life, she also delivers them down into the parts of the tree that are considered manifest and capable of having an ego or a personality.
Usually in stories, when the High Priestess aids the protagonist or the hero, they'll typically provide them with a tool that quickly becomes their most useful one, especially at like very particular times. And the times that a tool or item is not given, she is the individual that will provide the plans that will lead to success in the end for whatever endeavors at hand. And at the very least, she will provide a secret that is some sort of boon or advantageous, so long as it's kept a secret.
Help me, Obi-Wan, you're my only hope. Like the droid has the plan to the Death Star the whole time. What movie is that? Star Trek?
Oh, come on, buddy.
Well, as comic book as that idea sounds at first, achieving union with God is sometimes achieved through the operation of a tool, a weapon, or a sacred object. A photographer can be said to meet God through his camera, the archer through her bow, the racer through the car, and of course the Jedi through their lightsaber. In the case of a tool, union can be achieved virginally with the self. This weapon is your life.
So one interesting pop culture display of the High Priestess I like a lot is actually Zelda from The Legend of Zelda. She wields the Wisdom Third of the Triforce, and she also gives Link the light arrows in Ocarina of Time. And you're going to see how the bow and light all play into the symbolism later. And she has an alternate persona in the game after some tragedy strikes, and she becomes Sheik. That character even plays a harp, which is another symbol that we're going to talk about later. And when Zelda's running away from the castle from Ganondorf when he takes over, she throws the ocarina, over Link's head as Ganondorf's chasing her, and it lands in the river. And it's not until Link dives down into the river and touches the ocarina that this telepathic song is taught to him by Zelda and the royal family.
This reminds me of the story of the Roman goddess Minerva, who invented the flute and then she cast it away into a river where the satyrs found it. That's where they first discovered it.
Oh, that's fucking cool. I never knew that.
Link isn't unlike a satyr, is he? He's a forest spirit.
Yeah.
He's an elf, yeah.
Well,
But elves are forest spirits.
He's technically not. He's Hylian. He was in that game. He's raised in the wrong. His mother was actually like a regular human. That's why he grows up. The kids of the forest
He's
never
a
do.
half-breed.
But he grew up in the forest, so he's definitely satyr-like. But he's got more to his destiny. He's not your normal satyr. Galadriel in Lord of the Rings. She's definitely the High Priestess of that whole Third Age. The movies we all know and love and the books. She provides Frodo with this flask that has light from a certain star captured in it.
Oh my goodness.
And yeah, he uses that later to guide himself.
Doesn't she also offer a strand?
She gives them cloaks.
No, a piece of her hair.
Oh, yeah, Gimli. He asks her for one strand of her hair, not even a lock or anything. Because the dwarves they all love her because she looks amazing to them. And he's just asked her for one strand of hair. And she was like, look at this, everybody. You guys all call dwarves greedy. Gimli asked me for one strand. And then I think she does give him a full lock of her hair. And he's just like, hell yeah, I'll do this for you, my lady. And like the whole rest in the book, he mentions Galadriel so much more. It's kind of awesome.
Go ahead.
That's cool because she didn't even give the elven prince hair when he asked her of it.
Yeah.
That's because Gimli has been studying his tarot card associations and knew exactly what to ask for. We'll talk about why. I also think Death Stranding might be the High Priestess tarot card in the form of a video game.
I agree.
For so many reasons, but that's for another episode. So let's talk about her most famous depiction in the Rider-Waite deck of the tarot.
Speaking of giant books like Lord of the Rings, in her lap is the Torah, but the H is hidden, so it's just Tora. The scroll is symbolic of divine wisdom and codified knowledge. A.E. Waite described it as the greater law or secret law and the second sense of the word. In the Annunciation to the Blessed Virgin Mary, Gabriel tells Mary that she is to conceive the Son of God through Immaculate Conception. In biblical works of art depicting the Annunciation, it's common to see Mary receiving the news while holding a book in her hands, or even simply just pictured with an open book. This is also symbolic of a feminine quality of receptivity to the divine wisdom.
You have to be receptive with a book, otherwise there's no point in having it, really. The letters on the book can be rearranged to say rota, which also means wheel, and further can be rearranged to say tarot, which might refer to the deck itself as a book of hidden wisdom.
Just some other fun things to note about the Torah as well. In Russian, it means lightning.
Whoa.
In Japanese, it means tiger. And when it's said 3 times, Torah, 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 it's an abbreviated expression for Totsugeki Raigeki, which means lightning attack.
Woo!
That's the board wipe spell in Yu-Gi-Oh! Regeki.
This is actually an expression that was used as a signaling code as well to instigate the attack on Pearl Harbor in World War II.
That's so tight. Their code was tiger, tiger, tiger.
Lightning attack.
Yeah, very cool.
So in Hebrew, it's often translated as simply meaning divine law or guidance. However, it's more complex. Its meaning has to do with the method of teaching. Torah has its root in the verb yara, which means to flow as water, like rain, or to throw or shoot something like an arrow or a gun. And when it's used figuratively, it means to point out or teach, as if aiming a finger. Essentially, it means to flow or throw something, as in like the fluid motion of direction, like water or an arrow's flight. This fluid motion is the flow of teaching, which really makes a lot of sense as to why the High Priestess, as the virginal mother, holds the Torah.
It's a collecting of knowledge and then a pouring out to the people that will success you.
This makes me think of like when you're using your hands to do your ritual, that's what the energy you're flowing. You're channeling this idea here, this teaching.
Totally. There's also the symbol of the crown of Isis, and by the New Kingdom, Isis had gained close associations to the moon in addition to her other stellar associations. We see this upon the High Priestess's head in both the Rider Waite and the Thoth tarot. It's the crown of Isis, but this particular crown is not her headdress, which depicts the throne, but rather her crown that's the horned disc, and she adopted that in later eras. It's similar to the crown of Hathor. Many of the ancient depictions of Isis show her wearing a horned crown on her head, though it's not always a solar disc that's between the horns. Sometimes it's a lunar disc. In the tarot card, we can clearly see that the disc on the crown is a representation of a full moon. The planetary body the card itself is also associated with. This style of crown with the horned moon disc is also reminiscent of the lunar crown of the god Thoth, who was sometimes depicted with the full lunar disc cradled by a crescent moon, indicating the restoration of Horus's left eye, the Eye of Horus, also called the Eye of Thoth. So this symbolism shows us that the High Priestess holds the wisdom of Thoth, just as Isis does in the myths. The fullness of the divine wisdom of Thoth is then portrayed also in this card with the scroll of the Torah on her lap.
Thoth has some connections to the moon as well, right?
Yeah, it's mostly because he is the one who restores Horus's eye. So there's multiple connections with deities to the moon. There's Thoth, Khonsu, Ya, and Isis. And it gets a little bit complicated, but you do see depictions of Thoth with the lunar disc as a crown.
I think he's also used the moon to help like determine the laws of time or something like that, correct?
Yeah, it has to do with the full cycles of the moon and the cycles of the moon being related to the plucking out and the restoration of Horus's eye.
I think it's very interesting because the path of the moon, the High Priestess, connects us to Tifereth, the sphere of the sun on the Kabbalistic tree of life. If I'm not mistaken, Khonsu, one of the gods of the moon, his name meant traveler, and this was considered a union of Horus and Thoth?
Yes.
We'll talk about it later, but the Hebrew letter association with that path is Gemel, which means camel, and the job of the camel is to travel, so it's like all deeply encoded.
It's all connected.
So what about that veil?
Well, on the Rider Waite card, behind the High Priestess, there's a curtain draped which veils a vast ocean behind her. The veil is decorated with a woven pattern of palm trees and pomegranates. These are ancient symbols of fertility and eternity. The layout of the pomegranates on the veil mirrors the layout of the spheres on the Kabbalistic tree of life. The palm itself has been a long-standing symbol of fertility, triumph, and eternity. In ancient Egypt, it was a symbol of the god He, of the primordial Ogdod, whose name means infinity, since he was the infinite aspect of the primordial waters of Nun. The date palm was also used as an ancient symbol of the Sumerian deities Dumuzid and Inanna. So Inanna was syncretized by the Babylonians as the goddess Ishtar, and on the gate of Ishtar at Babylonia, the display of palm symbolism continued to be strongly associated with her. So we can think of both the veil and the pillars as the gates of Ishtar, a harmony and union of her sacred marriage. The date palm of Ishtar, the queen of heaven, was seen as a tree which connected the heavens with the earth. Priestesses of Ishtar in Babylon, they included both sacred priestess prostitutes as well as sacred virgin priestesses. I think that's kind of fun to note.
Get a little bit of the best of both worlds.
It's like a nun running a whorehouse.
There actually is a reason for that, and it's because the nunnery goes all the way back to the Temple of Isis.
It really does. So the other symbol that's on the veil, the pomegranate, it's often associated with the fruit of knowledge. And so we see the pomegranate used as a symbol for the priestly class, even in the Old Testament of the Bible. If we look at the book of Exodus, chapter 28, verse 33 through 35, you actually see instructions for decorating the vestments of priests with pomegranates at the hems.
Yeah, I saw that too. That was really fascinating. They're like, I don't know why, but God told us to just put pomegranates down here.
Decorate that shit with fruit, man. So in the Rider-Waite card, the pomegranates are painted as the open halves of the fruit, and it shows the multitudes of seeds within it. When a pomegranate is fully ripened, it actually splits itself open and it pours forth its seeds. So as a feminine receptive symbol of abundance, we can relate this as a womb filled with the seed of divine wisdom. That's sexy, right?
Yeah, and it bursts open with the offspring.
Yeah.
That's the most poetic possible way you could have put it.
So in the biblical erotic poem, the Song of Solomon, or the Song of Songs, we've brought this up before, but the cheeks of the Shulamite maiden, they're likened to the open halves of a pomegranate.
Your temples behind your veil are like the halves of a pomegranate.
Sexy.
Bonk, bonk. Time for horny jail.
So this is the same erotic poem that is said to have likely roots in the Babylonian myth of the marriage of Ishtar and Dumazid. Likewise, in the Old Testament Book of Kings, the pillars, known as Yakin and Boaz, they stood flanking the entrance to Solomon's temple, and these pillars were said to be engraved with pomegranates. So if we look at the etymological root of the word pomegranate, it comes from apple and seeded, as in a many-seeded fruit.
Like ovaries.
Yeah. It's also the same grana, like grenade. That's the same etymological root.
Oh, because, yeah, it's made up of multiple explosives.
It's many-seeded.
They also burst open when they're ripe.
Exactly.
Yummy.
So this makes the relationship to the pomegranate on the pillars of the temple symbolically synonymous with the Kabbalistic spheres on the Tree of Life as it emanates.
One thing I did notice when looking at this card is that, did any of you guys notice that the one single pomegranate to the lower left of the third one on the right, it doesn't have its seeds colored in?
Oh, yeah.
So, like Hecka was discussing, the pomegranates and date palms were representations of the Sephiroth and paths in the Tree of Life, respectively. The one pomegranate that has no colored seeds seems to be in the place of Thoth, which is the void of knowledge.
It's the non-pomegranate.
It's kind of turned off for some reason. And a lot of people, like, it's kind of a stagnant energy because you learn stuff there, but you have to figure out how to prune the tree in order to gain access to the other Sephiroth from that point. It's like a doldrums. But I thought that was interesting. The fruit is nudged out of place by her head. It's kind of a tease behind the veil.
That's sexy.
And it shows that it's behind the powers of uniting the extremities, or like, the crown knowledge, that godly knowledge with the actual being incarnated in your vessel. And she interacts with Thoth, which she obscures most of the lower Sephiroth, meaning that it's kind of a veil past, like you've already mastered the lower Sephiroth, and it's a veil towards the transition into the higher realm of manifesting. Like, it also is a male and female dichotomy, which both victory and strength of the palm, paired with the fertility and the abundance of the pomegranate, based on the Hebrew Bible interpretations of these plants, is the uniting factor between the two poles of extremes, which is, you get that in the pillars.
Wow, you two came up with some great information there. I think you're totally onto something, Mari, about that uncolored pomegranate being Da'at, which is knowledge. And on the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, it's considered a false crown. Like, when your ego looks up, that's as high as it can see, but the High Priestess represents a passing beyond that veil, which is what that uncolored fruit actually represents.
Absolutely.
In Judaism, the many seeds of the pomegranate are symbolic of the many teachings within the Torah. The pomegranate and its expressive crown-shaped top, they've also been used as inspiration for the crowns of coronet scepters, as well as imperial orbs that are used in ceremonies, like in England.
Yeah, I saw those, and they do look like little pomegranates.
So the combination of the palm and the pomegranate, they're woven together as symbols of the fruit of knowledge with infinity, penetrative, and receptive divinities in harmony. So together it denotes the eternal and divine marriage and the indissolubility of that union.
I think it's also interesting that it's pomegranates because they're present in the myth of Persephone. And, she's kidnapped by Hades and taken to the underworld. This is witnessed by Zeus and Helios. So there's some Jupiter and Sun associations, of course. But Hades has her eat some food so that she kind of falls for him. And she does become the queen of the underworld. Helios ends up telling Persephone's mother, it's not so bad. He's actually treating her pretty well. I see this trip to the underworld is almost like how the High Priestess sits in the middle of the abyss.
Funny you should say that. When Persephone is described in the underworld, she's sitting on a couch with Hades eating the pomegranates.
Nom nom nom.
Right. And in some of the myths, she only ate 6 seeds. And Persephone's mother was the god of fertility and rebirth. So she stopped doing her job. And Hecate and Helios and the other gods were all right, we got to broker a deal here. Everybody's dying. So on the grounds that she only ate 6 seeds for 6 months out of the year, half of the year, she's able to go to the world of the living and be with her mother.
The 6 seeds is also reminiscent of the sphere of Tifereth, the sphere of the sun in the Kabbalistic tree, which is what that path connects to. And then you could call above the abyss the underworld in its own way. They sometimes represent the same thing.
Right. And Hecate even helps Persephone's mother track down the truth of what happened to her daughter. Hecate is Diana in Roman pantheon, and Diana is known as Artemis and Hecate in Greece. And that just puts more moon synergy on with this. And Eve also ate a fruit, and it kind of got her in trouble. It kind of all falls in this card's domain, that symbolism.
Yeah, because it's the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So she just got the whole Torah in a bite. A little bit of Torah in every bite.
It's funny because this prompted her to get clothes to cover herself.
Speaking of robes, clothing, the background color of the Rider-Waite card, it matches her Marian robes with the same shade of light blue, and it implies the divine waters, light blue, like clear, unmuddied waters. The pouring forth of the waters of noon, it cascades down in the flow of her robes, and this is suggestive of both light and water, the ocean of life. It appears to flow all around her and through her. If it wasn't really for the humanizing features of her face and her hand in the card, she would appear to be made entirely out of light and water herself.
Clear like an azure sky, like an unmuddied lake.
So this is a form of life-giving fluidity, embodying and pouring forth the divine wisdom which flows as water. It simultaneously hints at the watery nature of the subconscious and emotions in their purest, most virile forms. In Jungian terms, the High Priestess represents the highly developed anima as an unconscious animating principle.
Like the Tool album.
Anima, not enema.
Same thing.
Not really.
No, something's going in.
Well, that's how you get to the anima. You have to get an enema.
But what's fascinating, though, is that the anima is male or female, and it's opposite of what your biological sex is.
And it all has to do with liquid.
Yeah, she pours back and forth from the extremes. She's a bridge.
Can we please not relate her to an enema?
I mean, it's a bridge. I'm not talking about enemas. They were.
Oh, God.
It's a bridge over water.
Listen, take it up with AC if you don't like it.
So every part of her body is covered with the water and the light of her creative fabrics, with the exception of her face and her hand, which holds the Torah. She really is heavily veiled. Even her hair is hidden by a head covering, which is, in many cultures throughout history, hair was also considered intimate and sexual.
It is.
I mean, I don't like when people just come up to me and touch my hair. It's my hair. I don't know you.
She holds the Torah in her lap, but notice it's upside down and the A is obscured.
The H is hidden.
There's a hidden part of the knowledge that she holds that you have to figure out yourself.
Right, which is also really reminiscent of the moon, and her watery nature also connects her to the moon. We also see a crescent at her feet. So if we look at how she's clothed in water and how it flows as the likeness of her garments from the crown of Isis on her head all the way down to the moon at her feet, it can be understood that she is also steadfast and connected to her sublime, veiled nature.
She's transferring the knowledge from the above to the below.
In California, we would say, she goes with the flow.
Right, bruh.
But seriously, A flow state corresponds to a state of mastery. In Star Wars, they ask, does the Force control us or do we control the Force? Well, it's a little bit of both. The magician's relationship to his tools is mental and practical. The High Priestess speaks to a mastery that's felt through the heart, liberated from the mental dimension of thought, contrivance, and separateness. As if the driver who no longer feels he's operating machine, he has become one with the road.
Yeah, you become one with the tool in order to wield it the most effectively.
Yes, that is how you chop people's heads off.
I think in this magical sense, it's like, well, you might be the tool and you got to let the holy thing take control of you. You got to let the smart priestess just inside of your heart and mind and let it do its thing.
You may think it's not about thinking. You're not really thinking on your own level. You're allowing an energy to come through you and do that part for you.
Yeah, it's that heart-mind connection again. Over her heart in the Rider-Waite card, which is, of course, the heart is the seat of the soul, she bears a large white cross, which symbolizes the pure, divine balance of her heart in manifestation.
And once again, she's the connective path to Tifereth as the embodied manifest sphere in the heart center of the Tree of Life.
So all four arms of the cross, they're equal in length, and this suggests a natural balance of all four elements, and in turn, an acknowledgement of the radial lines of the infinite circle. The cross itself is reminiscent of the sun, born within the circle, like the ancient symbol of the sun cross, or the ringed cross, and she's acting as the circle. She also has to cross over the path of the Empress, which is the horizontal path connecting Bina to Hakma, so that also makes a cross shape. In his Key to the Tarot, A.E. Waite says of the High Priestess,
"She has been called occult science and the threshold of the sanctuary of Isis, but she is really the secret church, the house of which is of God and man."
So we might relate this reference to the secret church as also being the Temple of Solomon.
Well, that's why they've got the pillars, right?
Makes sense.
With pomegranates on top, like a cherry, but it's a pomegranate.
So the Rider-Waite priestess, she's facing forward, seated between the two pillars in the card. One is black with the letter B, and one is white with the letter J. And this directly references the pillars of severity and mercy, Boaz and Yakin, the pillars of Jerusalem. They're also known as the pillars that flank the porch of Solomon's temple. So historically, pillars have been used as supporting structures with a particular emphasis on entranceways. In ancient Egypt, the earliest designs on pillars were meant to reflect the nature of trees. And we see this also with the Osirian mythology of the acacia and the sycamore tree, which encompassed the body of Osiris when he washed ashore, as well as the Jed pillar being symbolic of Osiris's spine. In the Rider-Waite card, the capital of each pillar looks to be the umbel or the head of a papyrus. In ancient Egypt, the papyriform columns was a common style of pillar used in temple entryways and such. Papyrus itself was highly symbolic of life, which came from the primeval marshes of creation and fertility. It was also symbolic of wisdom, since it was the plant of choice for making paper to write on. And it, again, connects us back to Thoth.
As we talked about in the Magician episode, if that card, the Magus, represents the word, then the papyrus would be, as we said earlier in this episode, the receiver of the word, like paper.
Like paper. It's where we get the word paper from. So papyrus amulets were symbolic of eternal youth, and the hieroglyph of the papyrus phonetically was Wadjet, and this relates to Wadjet, the serpent goddess. She also symbolized the all-seeing eye. The oracle at her temple at Per Wadjet was also the likely source for the oracular tradition adopted later on by the Greeks.
Oh.
Snake oracle. The dual papyriform columns that are used to flank temple entrances can be thought of as two whole eyes, like Horus, and to walk through them would be entering into the marshes where the gods walk.
It's interesting that the connection between paper, like the record or the prophecy, and snakes originates here. Like, that's old.
Old. This is a pre-dynastic connection as well with Wadjet.
And so since that time, you'll see a pairing of the serpent priestess giving prophecy in multiple different cultures over and over.
I'd just like to note that the two pillars featured on the art of the High Priestess can sometimes represent an entrance to a school or church where our behavior has to change. So these two pillars being present on the card could be telling us to have respect in this place where the High Priestess is. It's like when you cross into an area and you just like feel things are totally different, or you know there's different rules. And I think in that way, the two pillars can also act like a Shinto torii gate, and those are very famous looking Japanese style archways, and they represent a passage between two worlds. And I like to think of it like a portal or magic veil that takes you to a holy place, a doorway to the other side, so to speak. And I guess with that being said, that would put the High Priestess in the middle of these two ideas, and she's shrouded herself, and it's like a formless, illusory fabric of some sort, and maybe it looks like a living portal. To get through and see the true inner temple would require like a method, perhaps. And I guess we can call that method the middle pillar. Thus, this card would be the middle pillar itself.
As the middle pillar, she flows between the two and is the union between the two. The twin pillars can also be seen as an equal sign, as in mathematics. It represents the union between two seemingly different expressions. As we will discuss later, this coincides with our Hebrew letter association of gamel or camel, which is used to trade and connect two locations in the ancient world.
Right, and duality is seen across the entire major arcana, like this transition from the magus into the high priestess. The magician is usually seen with, all his things in order, ready to go, to allow things to manifest into the physical, whereas the high priestess can be seen to represent that transition from a physical into a spiritual thing, the very connection to the higher self that's within all of us. It's not physical stuff, it's the stuff at work that makes those tools work the way you interpret them to, the wisdom.
As the second numbered card of the major arcana, the High Priestess connotes duality and also implies a union of the magician, like 1 + 1 = 2.
I think her two-ness reveals that the one is a means and not an end. The High Priestess is hinting at the way we achieve the crown is through union rather than mutual annihilation. Likewise, if the fool represents the nothing and the magician represents the something, the 0 and the 1, we could say the High Priestess is the creative potential of their union. Nerds would call this binary language. She's more than the word. She's language. And this makes sense to me because language is not the thing it is describing. And language itself can be described as reflective or lunar for this reason. Language is also creative. Combined with its ability to veil or blind, it is the perfect analogy for the light which protects and envelops the High Priestess. Language also crosses the boundary of death into the hands of another mind through the medium of writing. As Robert Anton Wilson would say, this is where all true creative power resides, as information in the human mind. Language really is the camel carrying the merchandise, just as the High Priestess is carrying the word and is the medium of the message.
As Isis, great of magic, she's harmonized with a great many aspects of duality, so we might relate her as being like 2 to the power of 2. Isis connects the source, the power, the origin, and the cause with divine mind, or Thoth. Alset, or Isis, she's also known as Isis of the 10,000 names. She also has the power of multiplicity. We could relate this to the power of alchemical multiplication and the golden phallus even of her divine and immaculate conception of Horus.
Sounds like yin and yang to me at the same time too, these two black and white pillars creating all this math out of nothing.
Like in the case of the Fibonacci spiral or sequence, you need to have a dipolar relationship to achieve the back and the forth, the up and the down that drives the spiral.
Yeah, and this sequence repeats itself when you start like reducing the numbers. There's all kinds of interesting interpretations of what these two pillars really mean, and if they are representative of like this hidden math that if it's true, then there's truly like some sort of infinite energy out there that is attainable, at least from where I'm standing.
You're just trying to open up stargates.
But it makes sense for the High Priestess, given all of the symbolism, to sit in this realm of math and passive and active, manifested and non-manifested. It makes sense for her to sit there.
And as she sits there, she is veiled by all of manifest existence, which all throughout we find the unifying Fibonacci spiral. So we've talked about the High Priestess as an abstract concept of the esoteric that's built into the Jungian architecture of the mind and the universe. But what about actual history? What about the High Priestess across the globe in various different cultures? Where do we begin? We learned in our episode about the magician that etymologically, the Magi's name comes from priest, and it held a connotation of coming from Persia, where, mythologically speaking, the original witch of the West, the Greek Medea, was said to have fled. It was thought her lineage ultimately resulted in the tribes of Iran uniting under the title of Median and coming to be known as the Medes. This means that the magus or priest owes his name to a high priestess. specifically Medea. So as you may know, Medea was dedicated to and sponsored by the goddess of magic, Hecate, who is thought to originate from the east as the Phrygian mother goddess Cybele, and further south, the Egyptian goddess of magic, Waite Hekau, the twin snake lady in Minoan tradition being somewhere in the middle. Etymologically, the word priest gives us a clue as to why the priest or magus would be number one, but also suggests an overlap with titles sacred to the cross-cultural conception of the goddess of magic. So if we look at the etymology of priest, from the Greek presbyteros, elder of two, old, venerable, and comparative of presbys, also meaning old. Presby, the first element, is likely pres, meaning before or in front, and forward, hence in front, before, or first. As my source says here, perhaps the whole originally meant one who leads cattle, from the root of bos, meaning cow.
Like bovine.
Which means the word priest breaks down etymologically into foremost of the cattle, which all three, Hecate, Cybele, and Heka, were understood or given the epithet of controller of bulls, and even sometimes foremost of the cattle.
This is actually deeply related to what we very recently talked about with the Egyptian god Heka in the Magician episode, and I'll explain why. So for one, Lord of the Cause was one of the epithets of Heka, and if you look at hieroglyphs, in Egypt, they were used as a multifaceted and multi-layered form of pictographic language that had both symbolic and phonetic overlap. So it's pretty safe to say that many of the glyphs had interconnected meanings and that any one thing could be written in several different ways. So for example, the raised arms hieroglyph of Ka that we discussed in recent episodes shared interconnected meanings with the ox head hieroglyph and the bull hieroglyph. The Ka arms, the bull, and the ox head all shared the same name, Ka. To make any of these into a plural, you would add a U sound to the end. So Ka becomes cow. As we see in the name of the goddess Waite Hekau, whose name means great of magics, here Heka magic becomes Hekau magics. So this extended to the bull's hieroglyph, for example. To say cow, you would say Ka, and to make it plural, it would be cow. So sometimes the bull hieroglyph would be depicted with a complementary hieroglyph being an arm holding a stick of authority. And this is not a mere phonetic coincidence. The hieroglyphic language itself was saturated with deeper meanings and relationships. For example, the shepherd's staff, which was used to control the movements of the flock, shared the same name and was called a Heka scepter. So this is the infamous crook of the crook and flail pairing, easily recognized as symbols of Osiris. The Heka scepter was a hieroglyph that was also used as a noun to denote ruler and was used symbolically for a controller of the flock, or as Luke put it, foremost of cattle.
In Christianity, the connection between Christ, priest, and shepherd is so well recognized it hardly warrants a discussion. But have dudes always been the foremost of the cattle? If we accept some of the premises that Terence McKenna put forth in some of his research on the matter, certainly not. If you want the entire story, which includes magic mushrooms, where this one does not, check out Terence McKenna and the episode we did on him a few weeks back. According to Terence, the tale of Genesis in the Bible is a bit misleading. Mr. McKenna suggests that early hunter-gatherer societies were, although not absolutely and without exception, divided between groups of males and females, who were valued for having different sets of skills. While it was men who mostly tended to the hunting, it was mostly the women who tended to the gathering. As the theory goes, success in each of these roles were based on a different set of skills. Terence points out that hunter societies tended to have smaller vocabularies than hunter-gatherer societies and fewer still when compared to agricultural ones. The operative idea being that hunting places a premium on silence, stillness, patience, singular unwavering focus, raw strength, speed, and an almost heroic ability to block out thoughts and just act. Naturally, the most successful males engendered these abilities. Women, on the other hand, were valued for a diametrically opposed set of skills, which assisted in both gathering and the processing of the animal carcass. Gathering, when compared to hunting, relies on regular vocalization between members of the party, noticing subtle changes in the environment over time, multitasking, specialized knowledge of each plant, and making informed decisions over long periods of time. Ultimately, this led to women initiating the movement towards agriculture, farming, systematized knowledge, and eventually metropolitan life, which the Bible represents as Eve offering Adam the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, leading the couple to live a life of working and toiling in the dust of the earth. If nothing else, Genesis was a backlash against the woman with her early mastery of the word and a proclivity for systematized knowledge, which served as a bridge between the divine realm and nature. Terence points out that in places of worship of a horned goddess, we also see flourishing the first sprouts of agriculture, specifically in Anatolia, where Cybele and Hecate originate, bearing the appropriate title, Controller of Bulls, reflecting the power over nature that directed wisdom might accomplish. Thus, foremost of the cattle is actually a perfectly fitting title for the High Priestess. But what makes her so high anyway? The answer is tripod seating and cave gas. If it's true that women are evolutionarily more sensitive to the process which allows humans to vocalize and articulate abstract thought, we need to look no further than the ancient oracles of Delphi to see this feature utilized in ritual to accomplish the accurate foretelling of prophecy. Having influenced both myth and history alike, the oracles of Delphi were seen as the most important shrine in all of Greece and date back to as far as 1400 BC. That's a long time ago. Built around a sacred spring, the Temple of Delphi was said to be located at the Omphalos, the center of the world, and was dedicated to the sun god Apollo. According to myth, Zeus found the center of the world by releasing two eagles flying in opposite directions. When the eagles crossed each other's path, Zeus knew that the center of the earth was found and had the Omphalos stone placed. Egg-shaped, hollow, wider at the base, and carved in what looks to be like a net, the Omphalos was said to sit over the opening in the floor of the temple, where intoxicating cave gas arose before being inhaled by the High Priestess, who was known as the Pythia. She would then enter a trance and enunciate prophecy with legendary accuracy. The High Priestess, or Pythia, derived her name from the mythic origin of the cave gas. This cave gas, which she inhaled, was thought to be the vapors coming from the decomposing body of Python, a giant serpent-like dragon born of Gaia, the goddess of the earth.
Puff the magic dragon.
That's exactly what's going on. So for as long as anyone could remember, the Python had guarded this oracular site, then known as the Pythos, watching over its High Priestess and the Omphalos on behalf of its mother Gaia, to whom the temple was originally devoted. Everything would change, however, when the god of the sun, Apollo, was born and quickly developed a beef with Python. As the story goes, Hera, queen of the gods, had sent Python to harass Apollo's mother, Leto, to prevent her from ever giving birth because she had conceived twins after Zeus raped her in the form of an eagle after failing in his attempt to rape Hecate's mom, who changed into the island Delos to prevent it. Some versions of the story suggest Python, because of his gift of prophecy, knew that one day Apollo would try to take his temple, its High Priestess, and the Omphalos away from him. Python almost succeeded in preventing Leto from giving birth, but racked with pain unspeakable, was eventually taken in by Hecate's mom in the form of the island Delos, where Leto would finally give birth to the beloved godly twins, Artemis and Apollo. As it turns out, Python's prediction proved deadly accurate, as only 5 days after his birth, Apollo made his way to Hephaestus, who equipped him with a bow and arrows, which he would then use to fire a volley of 100 arrows upon Python, which would allow him to take the Omphalos and the Oracles of Delphi to himself. Even in death, however, Python would continue to provide the High Priestess her oracles by inhaling the sickly, sweet smell emitted from the earth, where he was thought to be buried under the temple. In fact, the term Python comes from Puthine, which means to rot.
Yum.
Now, the Oracle of Delphi is one of the most documented religious institutions of the ancient Greek world, universally esteemed and respected, making this particular High Priestess, as some speculate, maybe the most powerful woman of the classical era. Sadly, the details of the oracular ceremony are sparse, as authors as far back as 4th and 6th century BC write about them as if the proceedings are common knowledge with nothing to explain. That's always fun. While some want to give credit to the oracle's priesthood, who were said to interpret gibberish that the High Priestess spoke and then turn it into poetry, numerous classical sources like Herodotus testify against this idea and claim the High Priestess of Delphi would deliver her oracles with her own speech in dactylic hexameter. And no, I don't know what that is. They tried to teach me in school. I was resistant to it. Long vowels, short vowels, what the fuck are they talking about? So, as seen in the High Priestess of the Tarot, the Oracle is usually depicted as sitting upon a throne which is raised high into the air on usually 3 legs, which corresponds to her being the 3rd card of the major arcana, and her Hebrew letter association Gamel, which is also the equivalent of the number 3. Perhaps due to her importance in the ancient world, many of the motifs of this story are well represented in the esoteric anatomy of the High Priestess in the Tarot. The bow and arrow of either Apollo or Artemis are present in the Thoth deck and correlate to her lunar association and the Kabbalistic path to Tifereth, which, like the Omphalos, resides in the center of the Kabbalistic Tree of Life and is obscured by a veil or net, as seen on the rock itself.
Woo!
But if you'd like to hear the rest of the episode, where we talk about the High Priestess in Egypt, ancient Greece, the goddesses Isis, Athena,
Neith,
the Vestal Virgins,
Isis with and without a veil.
the poetry of Lon Milo Duquette,
The platonic solids.
and the alternative meaning of Gamala, please visit www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit, where your monthly donation of just $5 not only gets you the second half of this episode, but our entire library of episodes going back to, like, before the Stranding. And furthermore, I'll send you a 5x5 vinyl sticker of our cover art, and you'll instantaneously get the secret keys to our Discord server, which works through Patreon integration. So come on down. I got demons running all through me. All through me. Thank you, everybody. Eat carrots and shoot lasers.
Pew, pew, pew.